Low vigilance relationships. What does that mean? What are some of the qualities we might think of as a low hypervigilance relationship? Hypervigilance is when we're anxious, we might have social anxiety in a relationship. We're getting signals of it's not safe to be here. If we have qualities of low vigilance in a relationship, we're not feeling hypervigilant. What are some of those signals? Could be when we're with a group of people or one, could be more, that this person that we're thinking about is reliably well regulated. We don't feel like, oh no, what's going to happen when I see them today? We don't feel like that when we're with them. We're more relaxed. We need to be in a relationship with someone when we have this expectation of kindness, that we have an experience of being respected by them, and that we can engage as who we really are. We have that authentic engagement. And we know that we're not going to be gaslit or shown contempt. We feel emotionally safe. And when we do, we feel safe enough to be ourselves and we can have fun together. We can enjoy each other. One of the things that happens when we're in high vigilance relationships a lot is that we wonder if we would be bored. It's almost like we're on a drug. We're jacked up into that adrenaline and drama in our relationships, and it can take a while to come down from that. Trauma bonding refers to the psychological connection that can form between a victim and their abuser. So typically that's a result of an ongoing abuse or trauma. It can happen to us as children with our parents. It can happen with a romantic partner. It can happen with friends. People who are trauma bonded have a sense of loyalty usually. We don't want someone else saying something bad about our parents, for instance. And despite the harm that's inflicted on us, we feel loyal to that person. We might love them and hate them. It's complex. We're not always aware of it. Trauma bonding is not a conscious choice that we make. It's like, oh, I'm going to bond with that person who's being mean to me. That's not how it works. It's a psychological response to a traumatic experience in a traumatic relationship. And as we come through into our adult lives, where we have a little bit more control and power over who is in our life, who we're in relationship with, we might still associate that high drama and intensity with love. And that makes us really vulnerable to unhealthy patterns. If we were in a situation growing up where nobody saw us or cared about us, then we're going to be really vulnerable to someone who does see us and it seems like they care about us. And perhaps we're not going to really see what's going on in a relationship. Sometimes when we're looking at a relationship, we're looking at, okay, this is a person who I need to be careful around. It might be a parent, it might be a sibling, in-laws, it could be a variety of people, it could be at work, it could be in a social setting where there's a bully in the situation in that social group. It's not somebody you would care to hang out with, but you want to hang out with your other friends, and that's part of the cost of that. We might not have a lot of control over what that person does, and we might not even feel like we want to set really clear boundaries with them. Sometimes we can, oftentimes we can. Sometimes, though, that happens in ourselves. The boundary might be, I'm just not going to share very much when that person's in the room because I don't trust them. I've been shown contempt by them before. They've tried to exclude me. They're not on my side. And my job right now is to not fall for it. I'm not going to fall for believing what they say. I'm not going to fall for the way they see me either. I'm going to protect myself when I'm around them. Sometimes it's not so much that someone wishes us harm. It's more that they just are not regulated enough. We might always have to be a bit cautious. We know them. We know that certain things are going to put them into a fight response. We don't want to be around that, so we might try to placate them or to avoid going into that, but we know that they're probably going to. In those kinds of situations, we're going to be careful about what we share. We're probably going to be a little bit more tight around how much time we spend with them. And the trick here and the deep practice here is to try to maintain a compassionate relationship and an open heart, even as we're keeping our guard up, even as we're protecting ourselves. We can probably all think of people like that in our life. It's not maybe the person we would choose to be with. Maybe it's a coworker. Maybe it's a family member. We all have people like this in our life. When we're looking at these relationships that we're in this particular one, I'm thinking more about romantic relationships. We really want the person to change. We don't want the relationship to be over. We want it to continue, and we want them to change in a way that we could feel okay about staying with that person. The problem is when we can't see what's really going on. We're pretending in a way that they could change and that they want to change. Those are two different components of this. Not everybody values respect and kindness, and not everyone who values that has the capacity. Maybe they have a really strong fight response, for instance, when they're under stress. I find that it's a red flag if you're always asking yourself about why you're staying in this relationship. Do I need to go? Well, it's not so bad. And then sometimes it's like, yeah, this isn't working. I need to go. And for me, that was a real problem. And I stayed in an emotionally abusive relationship for years because I kept going back and forth. Yeah, this isn't working. No, it's not so bad. So this ongoing uncertainty is a red flag. It's natural, of course, for relationships to go through tough times. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a longer term uncertainty about something in me tells me that this is not healthy for me. And yet I don't feel like I can leave for some reason. Who we decide to stay in relationship with, the more clarity we have, the better decisions we can make. Right now, as you're thinking about that, what's going on in your body? Especially if you're thinking about a relationship that you're in right now where you're wondering about that. Or maybe you have a memory of a relationship like I do. Take a few breaths. Let some air come in. Release it on the exhale. We don't have to make ourselves right or wrong or to shame ourselves for this. We could be kind. These are personal, high stakes decisions. And we need to be careful. We need to think about all of the different factors. Often people can't afford to separate, especially if there's children involved. But there could be other factors too. Maybe there's an injury or an illness going on, and you feel like this is not the time that I can walk away from this relationship. Maybe you don't want to blow things up for your children. You feel like, oh, I need to continue to work a bit harder and see if we can make this relationship work. There's all kinds of things that come into this, and there is not a right or a wrong answer. Nobody else can look at this and say, you should do this, you should do that. Other people might be able to see it more clearly and have a different perspective that you could take into account. And when it comes right down to it, we will do what we are able to do. The kinder we can be with ourselves, the more courage we have. We don't want to shame ourselves. That really shuts us down. To be in a relationship where someone's eyes light up when you walk into the room, that's something that we all deserve. And maybe right now that's not the relationships that you're in. Maybe your romantic partner or your best friends. Maybe that's not really what's happening. Maybe that's something that you could work on or that you need to make some changes in. And not to internalize, well, of course they don't light up. I'm not worth being with. We have so much of a vulnerability to these core deficiency beliefs. The truth is that a lot of people are not available to us for reasons that have nothing to do with us. They have their own stuff going on. They have their own childhood trauma going on. They have their own ideas about life, their own stresses. And not everybody can be there for us in a way that they want to be and not in a way that we would need them to be. We can have some compassion around all of that. Relationships are hard. and they're rewarding. When you have someone whose face lights up when you walk into a room, there's nothing better than that. Let's do the inquiry now. Safe enough relationships are low vigilance. Let's start with someone that you feel safe or safe enough with. Take a few deep breaths, let your body settle, and bring them to mind. There might be memories, images, experiences that you've shared. What does that feel like in your nervous system? Let yourself really settle into that. Maybe every time you see them, you get a big, long hug from them and your whole body softens. Maybe it's somebody that they're the first person you think of when something happens that's exciting or that something happens that's distressing. They're the ones you can laugh with, the ones you can be yourself with. Let yourself feel into that. Notice what that feels like in your body. Are your muscles relaxing? What's happening with your breath? Move to somebody who keeps you on edge. And you might look into some of the components like, does it make sense that I feel this connected to them? Maybe there's a trauma bond that's part of this. Why is it that I'm still in a relationship with this person who doesn't make me feel good? Who makes me feel edgy and keeps me on guard? I never know when they're going to lash out at me, when they're going to treat me poorly. Notice how that feels in your body. Probably need to take a deeper breath. Might need to move your body around. And if there's any shaming, see if you could let that go. We're in relationships that aren't healthy for us for many, many reasons. And it's not our fault. It's not to say there's nothing we can do about it. Often we can, but we're going to look into that. So let yourself clear that screen. I can afford to be myself in relationships on an overall basis, with generally speaking. Do you feel like mostly you're authentic? Mostly you can be who you are? Notice what that feels like in your body. Or maybe you have a lot of social anxiety and you're not really bringing forward who you are with most people because you're just too anxious, you're worried. That might be something that's here too. There might be very few people that you can really be yourself with. To be specific, I can afford to be myself in this relationship. This is a reverse inquiry, so there might be things that are coming up saying, no, that's not true. Well, most of the time, but when that person's tired or hungover or something, I'm not going to go there. I'm going to step way back. And I don't want to put up with what's going to happen then. So yeah, most of the time I can afford to be myself, but not always with them. What's going on in your body? What are the sensations and energy? Do you have a churning in your gut? Do you feel that anxiousness in your body? Are you clenching your teeth? What's going on? Through any of these inquiries, we're really working with staying present. There might be a huge amount of grief as well. I really invested in this relationship. I'm really disappointed. I think I'm going to have to leave, or I'm going to have to set some different boundaries, or I've decided that I can't do that for whatever the reasons are. I'm going to have to just deal with that myself, this sadness or grief. What's there for you around this specific relationship that you're working with? And one thing for me as I look back on that long term relationship with my partner, there are so many things that I didn't speak up about, things that I would never participate in now. There's always a balance here of, can I be understanding and patient and kind with myself that my trauma history led me to a certain trajectory in life. It led me into a certain relationship. And for whatever reason, I didn't feel like I could leave it until I finally did. And I'm happy that I did. And I wish that it happened sooner. However, that's not what happened. So, could I be kind and patient with myself and to be open hearted with myself and to be realistic, to let myself feel anger about it? All of these emotions are here. And as we feel safe enough, we can feel them ourselves. We can have a low vigilance relationship with ourselves. Part of that involves backing off the inner critic, looking in to see if I'm shaming myself, I could stop. From there, we're more able to have safe enough, connected, vulnerable, true relationships with other people. Come back into your body, take a few breaths. If you want, you could stand up and shake this off, shake it off the ends of your hands, or stand up and let your whole body shake. You could do some breathing, put your hands on your heart. Whatever it was that was going on in our relationships in the past does not mean that that's going to be what happens in the future. These are things that we can work with. If you have a lot of high drama in your relationships, a lot of protecting yourself, a lot of not being able to get away from something that was really harmful, it's going to take a while for your nervous system to settle and for that trauma bonding to release. And during that time, you might not want to be in relationships with other people quite as much. You might want to be working with safe enough within myself, really supporting yourself, gathering the resources, the resilience, and the strength so that you're not going to get back into a relationship like that. And over time, the drug will wear off enough, the drug of adrenaline and cortisol will wear off enough that you start to be more nourished and more satisfied with low vigilance instead of the high drama. And that can happen for everyone. Thanks for being here.